This week I saw a picture, maybe you saw it too, of Hollywood actor Alec Baldwin standing out beside of his Range Rover. He had just plowed into a tree. He was looking really perturbed. Apparently a dump truck or a garbage truck of some kind cut him off in traffic, and he swerved his car to avoid the truck and hit the tree. The tree's going to be fine. The Range Rover is pretty beat up. And I was thinking about that. It reminded me when I was in college, my baby sister, who's my wife's age, so not a baby anymore, right? My sister was driving my parents' car, not a Range Rover, but it was white, so there's the similarity. And there was a tree in our front yard, and she was reaching down on the way home to change the radio station. I think she was on a station she wasn't supposed to be on, that my parents had told her not to go to, but she was changing that radio station and didn't look up and drove the car into the ditch right in front of our house and bam, right into the tree. And I was just standing there watching my sister wreck my parents' car, not paying attention. Oops, right? And of course, the standard rule for driving is to watch. Watch the road. Watch the other cars around you. We have cars now that do that a little bit for you. They're supposed to be self-driving. Mine has cameras everywhere watching the road for me. Doesn't help a whole lot, I'll tell you. But you're supposed to be aware or beware. Be aware of your surroundings. I was thinking about that word beware. It's a verb that comes from the 13th century Middle English, where, and probably even from Old English. And it means to be prudent or alert, to be wary, just to be aware. And it means to watch out for something. When we say the word beware, we're really using a word that's 800 or 900 years old. Now, in this text, Solomon is telling us to watch, to just stop and look around at our surroundings. And in particular, he wants us to look at something, to pay attention so that we can see something that's around us. And he says here, beware of fools. This is Solomon's entire point in chapter 10. He's warning us to keep our eyes peeled, to watch for foolishness, not just in other people, but also in ourselves. And the reason why this is so important is because folly is dangerous. It hurts you when you tolerate it in yourself, and it hurts you when you're around other people who are foolish. Now, as it goes, the Old Testament has a few different words for fool. In fact, in Proverbs 1, verse 22, 3 words for fool are given. The Hebrew word pethi, means simple-minded. Sometimes that's translated simple one or simpleton, just to be naive. Another word is kasil, which means to be a dullard, to be ignorant. And here, the word kasil means to be willfully ignorant. This is the common word for fool. And then there's a final word translated fool, lutz, which just means to deride or to mock something, to scoff. It's really difficult to say how these 3 words work together, because in Proverbs 1:22, he's saying, Solomon, who wrote this text, is saying, you need to be aware of these people. How long will you simple ones love simplicity? How long will you scoffers keep on your scoffing? How long will you fools live in your foolishness? And some people say, well, there's a progression there. It goes from the naive person to the person who's now willfully ignorant to finally someone with a scornful attitude. Other people say, no, it's just really kind of aspects of the same person. A person who's a fool is both, in one sense, naive. He's also willfully ignorant of what he does not know. And he really is arrogant in that he scorns what he doesn't know and mocks God. The Old Testament has a couple other words for fool. One is one you're probably may be familiar with, and it's the word naval, or Nabal. Do you remember Nabal? That's the way we say it. The word is Nabal, and it's talking about someone who is lacking sense, but in an evil way, and kind of a stubbornness to him. And there's a story in the Old Testament about a guy named Nabal who was this very way. In our text, in Ecclesiastes 10, we have another word. And actually, it's interesting. It's used twice in our chapter, but it's used throughout Ecclesiastes, and it's only used in Ecclesiastes. You find this word in chapter 1 and verse 17. I applied myself to wisdom and also madness and folly. It's used in chapter 2 and verse 3. I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. In chapter 2 and verse 12, I turned to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. It's verse 13 of chapter 2. I saw that wisdom is better than folly. In chapter 7 and verse 25, I turned my mind to understand and investigate and search out wisdom and the scheme of things, and to understand the stupidity of wickedness and the madness of folly. Solomon is using this word, talking about this idea of a person who is willfully ignorant. I would say, in fact, you find this word in verse 1, you find this word in verse 13 of chapter 10, but I think this word, it's sakhil. It means foolish or shameless, but again has that idea of willfully being foolish. I think sakhil is almost synonymous with kesil. In fact, the words sound the same. It's like you take the K sound off one and switch it with the S sound of the other. They're very similar in Hebrew. But I think here, that other word, kesil, appears 3 times in chapter 10. So Solomon is almost using the two words interchangeably. So I would say it this way. When Solomon says, be wary of fools, here's what he's saying. Be careful about people, or even in yourself, being willfully ignorant of God's wisdom. And what Solomon is doing is shining a bright light, a blindingly bright light on this subject for us. And this is what he's saying. Number 1, beware of foolishness. Do not tolerate it in your own life. Again, verse 1, dead flies cause the ointment to stink. He's saying foolishness will overtake whatever wisdom you actually have. That's what he's saying in verses 1 and 2. Foolishness in this case is to wisdom like dead flies are to perfume. So the perfume is wisdom, the dead flies is foolishness, and those dead insects, they get into your perfume, and you smell, instead of the beautiful perfume, the intoxicating aroma of that perfume, what you actually just smell are the dead flies. And so he's saying, when you have a little bit of foolishness in your life, it actually can color, it can overtake, it can influence God's wisdom, even if you have a lot of that. You can be wise in a lot of areas, but if you're a fool in one area, that area becomes so powerfully strong, it overtakes you. So foolishness is something that overtakes wisdom. It overwhelms the benefits wisdom provides. It's the very opposite of wisdom. In fact, he's picturing wisdom as being right-handed and foolishness as being left-handed. And in the ancient world, in Israel particularly, being left-handed just kind of had the idea of being evil. If you were right-handed, that was good. If you were left-handed, that was bad. Now, I think some of that is because, remember, in ancient Israel, at the beginning of the kingdom particularly, where was the one king from? Saul. He was from a little tribe called Benjamin. And where was David from? Well, David and his son Solomon, the writer of this text, he was from another tribe called Judah. And if you read the book of Judges and the book of Ruth and even into 1 Samuel, you'll find that you have this story of the Benjaminites and the Judahites kind of at war. And when you're reading at the end of Judges, you come across a little story about these left-handed people, and guess what tribe they're from? Anybody want to take a wild guess? Where the right-handed people from Judah are saying, beware of those left-handers from Benjamin. They're bad. Now, I say this as somebody who's left-handed, but this is followed all the way through to today. My dad would tell me this. You know what I think it's maybe the Latin word for left-handed, sinister. Oh, left-handed people, you've got to watch out for them. Well, he's saying here that with that concept in mind, right-hearted, left-hearted, good-hearted, wise, foolish. And folly, he says, is left-hearted. It's left-handed. It's bad. And that folly comes out of the heart. It's not primarily an intellectual thing. Foolishness really isn't just a mental thing. While foolishness can impact the mind, you can make a terrible decision. You know, you buy a car and you buy a bad car. And you go, oh, that was dumb. I went deep into debt to buy this car and it doesn't even run. It's terrible. Oh, that was dumb. I'm never going to do that again until you do, right? I mean, that's how we are. We do. We sometimes make foolish choices. That's not what he's talking about. He's really talking about a heart thing. I think that's why there are so many people who are really smart but kind of fools at the same time. And sometimes people who are much less educated who can be wise. You see, folly in yourself is bad. And do you know it will embarrass you? Oh, it's an embarrassing thing when people see it. In fact, you look at verse 3, he says here, yes, also, when he that is a fool walks by the way, his wisdom fails, and he says to everyone, hey, over here, I'm a fool. He's basically identifying himself. The point is here, a fool lacks his God-given sense, and in his daily routine, as he walks by the way, he proves this over and over again. He cannot do wise things because his heart is foolish, and it becomes obvious to everyone around him. The wisdom that he has is being overwhelmed by the folly in his heart. Don't tolerate it in yourself. Do not be willfully ignorant. You have that choice to follow after God's wisdom or not. And when you don't, that's on you. Now, not only should you not tolerate it in yourself, but be careful when you're around others who are foolish. Look at verse 4. If the spirit of the ruler rises up against you, don't leave your place, because yielding pacifies great offenses. There's an evil I've seen under the sun, an error which proceeds from the ruler, folly in a place of dignity, and the rich, or in his mind maybe the wise, in a low place. He says, I've seen servants riding on horses. I've seen princes walking on the road while the servants are riding on horses. He says, you know what? Foolishness, not only is it bad in you, but it's really bad when you see it in other people. The worst kind of fool, he says here, is someone who's responsible for other people. I think the worst kind of fool in Solomon's mind is one who's a ruler and is foolish. Can we all just acknowledge that the last person you want in a position of authority is a fool? In this case, Solomon argues that a foolish ruler is the worst kind of ruler. And he even says, here are some ways you can pacify him, because his folly will lead him to unreasonable anger. And that's the foolish man that sits on a throne. And the result of that is an upside-down world. When foolish people are in positions of authority, well, he gives an example of wealth. The rich are made low, and the lowly are made rich. Or he gives the example of a position, servants on horses, while princes are walking. He's not saying that this is what should happen. He's just saying the natural order of things is all upended when a fool is in authority. So not only should you not tolerate foolishness in yourself, but men and women, we cannot be around others. We do not want to tolerate it in the lives of others. So my question for you is this: do you tolerate foolishness in your own heart? Do you? I was thinking of all the ways in my life that I kind of really do tolerate foolishness. Sometimes I say things, and I like humor. Sometimes I say things that are foolish. I don't have to do that. I was thinking, I need to stop doing that. I don't want to stop having a sense of humor, but I don't want to play the fool either. Do you tolerate it in your own life? Do you willfully make choices that you know goes against God's word? This is how convicting this was for me this week. I was in the middle of my week. In the middle of my day, I was doing something, not necessarily a bad thing, but in the middle of it, I just went, this is foolish. I'm not going to do this. Stop doing it. Not going to do it. Do you tolerate it? When you really start thinking about this, it can be very convicting. Oh, do you tolerate foolishness in the lives of others? Do you know where I think this becomes most profound, particularly, is in young adults and teenagers. In our culture, the people we most emulate, in culture I mean, I don't really emulate them. I read about their lives and I go, I'm so glad the Lord did not lead me down that path. But I know a lot of young adults and teenagers look at those people as, and this is the word, influencers. And you look at their lives, they're broken. It's disturbing the path they're walking down. But Christians, people who should know better, walk down that same path. We end up making choices like they make. I was thinking about the golden age of sitcom. This isn't an anti-TV screed, although it could be, but this is really against television. But I was thinking of the golden age of sitcom. Did you ever, some of you were old enough to remember the 90s. Do you remember the 1990s? Every sitcom was about this group of people living in New York City in luxury apartments they couldn't afford with no jobs. They had no job, and somehow they were able to afford a lifestyle that would cost really, truly hundreds of thousands of dollars. Very expensive. Vacations and trips and eating out at seemingly every day. And you just think, that's impossible. Do you know what's interesting? How strongly just the nature of those influenced my generation? That's what people wanted to be like. Well, yeah, it'd be nice. I'm going to live in New York and I'm going to eat out every day and not have a job. That'll be wonderful. That'd be great. And it's impossible. Oh, you can do it for a while on a credit card, but it'll catch up to you eventually. That's just foolishness, men and women. That's foolishness. Why emulate that? Why desire to be like that? Well, I say foolishness is something we ought to watch for. And I guess I should ask the question then, why? Why ultimately should we watch out for foolishness in ourselves and others? Why should we be aware of this? And there's a second point here, and it's because, this is number 2, foolishness will hurt you. It will. And Solomon makes 3 points here, and they're kind of all different, but it's interesting nonetheless. The first reason is, he says, is because profitable ventures become unprofitable. When you're a fool, when you're acting foolishly, what should be profitable, what you would normally think, this is a good thing, turns out to be a bad thing. And he gives, beginning in verse 8, 4 positive actions that actually turn negative. Digging a pit, that's positive. Gardening, breaking through a hedge, that's positive. Quarrying stones, right? Digging up stones to use for building, that's positive. Chopping wood, that's positive. Those are all positive. But when the fool does it, Solomon says, digging a pit, he's actually digging his own grave. He will fall into it. That's negative. Gardening, that's positive, but he breaks through the hedge and there's a snake there and the snake bites him on the hand and it's a venomous snake and he dies. That's negative. Or quarrying stones, the guy's out there chopping stones and the stone breaks off and hits him in the head, and that's negative. Or even chopping wood, and as he's chopping wood, a splinter comes out and pokes him in the eye. That's negative. So he's saying you've got all these things that are positive. And when you do them as a wise man and you're involved in these things that you would say, not only are they positive, but these are all good actions. In an agrarian type society, a pre-modern society, this is what you'd find people doing. Digging pits and gardening and quarrying and chopping wood. This would have been part of everybody's daily routine. But he says for fools, they're dangerous. They can cause you to hurt yourself. In fact, he goes on and says, not only do profitable things become unprofitable because positive actions turn negative, he actually says even your efforts become wasted. Imagine, he says here, you're cutting down a tree, but your blade is blunt. It isn't sharp. You didn't wet the blade. You didn't sharpen the blade. He says, what do you have to do? Well, you got to use more force. So he's giving you a picture. You got a guy out there, and he's a lumberjack. He's big and strong, kind of like me, lumberjack. And he's got, now why did you laugh at that, Carol? That kind of hurts. But he's got his axe, Paul Bunyan, right? He's got his Babe, the blue ox, and he's ready to cut down some trees. And he's out there, and he's hacking at this tree, right? Is that how you do it? He's hacking at this tree, right? Cutting at the tree. But his blade's blunt. So bong, 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 nothing's happening. So what does he say? What does the fool say? I have to swing harder. Now, I'll just tell you something about the Walker family. When I grew up, we had a little expression called more is better. It isn't actually true, and it's actually probably a bad thing. And it came because, this is a terrible story. We had a VCR. Do you remember VCRs? We had a VCR. And sometimes you have to put oil in a VCR. Do you remember this? But nobody read the directions of VCR. Did any of you ever read the directions? So some of you read the directions. Some people read the directions of a VCR. Our family never did. So one night we had a VCR tape. It's in the VCR, and it wasn't working. And somebody got the bright idea, we need to add oil to the VCR. And there's only one place on the VCR that you would say, might take oil without reading the directions. And I won't say who in our family did this, but somebody opened the flap where the tape goes in and started squeezing oil into the flap of the VCR. You have oil dripping out of the VCR, dripping off the television, onto the ground. And actually, it was funny. I mean, the whole family were all laughing. And I'm sitting there going, you're ruining the VCR. This is a terrible thing. And then somebody in the family said, and I honestly don't remember who, more is better. So it was just keep squeezing the oil. Can I tell you that's not how to oil a VCR? And it will ruin your VCR. And I know this firsthand because it never worked again. And we got a new one and didn't read the directions. So there you go. So he's got this guy out chopping wood. He's got a blunt blade, but instead of sharpening the blade, he says, I'm just going to have to swing harder. Well, that's just wasted effort. Or you got this snake charmer. What's his job? Right? What's that from? I know it. It's in the back of my head. It's from an opera. Anyway, it's from Samson and Delilah. That's the bacchanal of Samson and Delilah. Anyway, so look it up, Cesson, great opera. So he's playing, and the snake comes out, right? He's being charmed, but whoop, he bites the guy who gave you money to charm the snake. He bites the guy, and the guy, dead. He's not going to pay you. Wasted effort. You see what he's saying here? First, you have all these people doing positive actions that lead to negative results. Then you have people trying really hard to succeed in life, and it all turns bad. Foolishness will hurt you because profitable ventures will turn unprofitable. There's a second reason, because gracious words will turn biting. Oh yes, look at verse 12. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of the fool swallow him up. This is one of the ways our foolishness is revealed to others, is what we say. I was recently in the middle of a conversation, and all these thoughts were coming to my mind, and I thought to myself, none of those thoughts are good. None of those will be helpful. All of them are hurtful. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm so thankful I did. That's a rare thing for me. I thought, this is a win. Yes, good job. This is hard. Because when you have a foolish heart, it'll come out through what you say. Solomon puts people into categories here. You have the wise man, you have the foolish man. And what distinguishes one from the other? The wise man, his words are good, they're kind. The word here, gracious, means agreeable. You hear the words of a wise man, you go, oh, I just love talking to him. I love talking to her. But the words of a foolish man are like a chewing mouth. Like a chewing mouth. I sometimes, when I'm holding the baby in the house, I get to do that. I'm holding the baby, and I've got him up by my head. His mouth goes on my cheek. And of course, he doesn't know one thing from another. He's 4 weeks old. But I can feel his mouth on my cheek. And they have that smell, the baby smell. I just love all of that. Everything about it. Especially since I don't change diapers. It's wonderful. Babies are wonderful. And then when they start crying, I just say, Mom, this is yours. That chewing mouth, though, oh, it's nothing in a baby. It's wonderful. But in an adult, it becomes biting. It becomes eating. And he says it swallows, it gulps down. And notice what it's gulping. It gulps down one's reputation. It's gulping down. The lips of a fool gulps him down. It chews him up. The word swallow here is to devour. And it reveals that sometimes in a foolish man, his thoughts are irrational. He doesn't know the end from the beginning, but he's acting like he does. And it reveals that there is an arrogance in acting like he knows what's going to happen when he doesn't. Oh, listen, when we're foolish, our words reveal our folly, and it's hurtful, and it's negative. There's a third thing, a third reason why we want to avoid folly in our lives, and that's because it negatively influences everything it touches. Now you look at verse 15, the labor of the fool wearies everyone because the fool does not know how to go to the city. He's just saying the fool doesn't know where he's headed. Woe, O land, when your king is a fool. Blessed, O land, when your king is wise. That's what he's saying here. You have a land where the princes eat in the morning and the king is a child. You have another land where the king is a rightful king and the princes eat at the right time for strength and not for drunkenness or feasting. And by much slothfulness, the building decays. He says here, it's terrible to have fools in government. Woe is the nation where fools are in authority. He's already said that before, but he's reiterating it now. When the king is in authority and he's a fool, it's terrible for a country. And I'm not going to be political here, but I will tell you this. You can see how God is working in our nation based on the people who get elected. He chooses that for us. We vote, but he chooses that. And it's dangerous. It makes us grieve when we see decisions made by our leaders on a local level, on a state level, on a national level. The last couple of years, talking to a man who was talking about one of our towns around here. And he said, the mayor's crazy. I said, what? No, really, certifiable. The mayor is crazy. Really? He said, Matt, I'm telling you, I work with this guy every week. He is crazy man. Like his brain just does not work. How terrible is that? Whoa. And then, whoa, he says, here, the rafters fall down. The roof is decaying. To have fools in a family, not just in government, but in the family. When the dad's a fool, it influences the children. It hurts the kids. He's talking about it like a building, but he says, oh yeah, it's bad. When by slothfulness or by laziness, because the man's a fool, the house is falling apart, and because of his idleness, the rafters are just falling through the floor. It's terrible to have fools in the family. The roof leaks, the rafters sag, and when fools are in authority in a family, there's structural problems in that home that cannot easily be fixed. When we men bring folly into our homes, we hurt our wives and our children. When we tolerate it in ourselves and in our families, we hurt our families. And I think finally, he says it's terrible to have foolish friends. They're foolish because they repeat what you say to others. He says, be careful what you say about a king, even in your bedchamber. And I love this little piece of the proverb. He says, because a bird will hear it. We still say this, by the way. A birdie told me. You ever hear that expression? That's what Solomon is saying. A birdie told me. I heard it. Just in the wind, I heard it. Well, no. It leaked out. It got out. And it did damage. And it hurts you, even when you don't intend for it to do so. Can I just ask you again, do you tolerate foolishness in yourself, willful ignorance? Do you tolerate it in the lives of others? Are you around people who influence you and they're foolish and their influence is hurting you? Profitable things will become unprofitable, gracious words will become biting, and even your whole outlook on life will become negative because you tolerate those things. I got a call this week from my son. He was telling me a story. I won't tell you all the details. It was about a young man who's in our nation's military. He's responsible for this young man. And he was telling me this story about how the guy was at a party. He's in his early 20s, met a middle-aged woman. He lives as far away west as you can go to be still in America. She lives as far east as you can go, but she was out there, and they met at a party, and by the end of the night, I guess, they decided to get married. That's how you pick a spouse. We've known each other in, a large company of people for a few hours. Why not get married? And then he didn't tell anybody. And then he did all sorts of crazy things, none of them really wrong or bad. I mean, can you marry somebody after knowing him or her for 3 hours? I guess he didn't know she had a child who has severe handicaps. Didn't know that. Didn't really know anything about her, got married. And now is trying to figure out, what do I do with my life? What do I do? It's all, and you just think, that's just foolish. It's just foolish. It's so hurtful. Don't be a fool. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for our time together today. In your word, help us, Lord, to recognize here that we can be willfully foolish. Even as believers, we can make bad choices, bad, hurtful choices. Before I finish praying, let me just ask you to think about your life. Are you making bad choices right now? Maybe you even think maybe they're good choices, but you know in your heart they're bad. What I mean by that is this: you're justifying your bad choices to yourself. You're trying to make it work. You're pounding the proverbial round peg into the square hole, and you just can't make it work. Can I encourage you? Don't be a fool. Find wisdom in God's word. I don't want to have you raise your hand, because who wants to raise their hand and say, Pastor, pray for me, I'm a fool, right? I mean, we're not going to do that. Nobody would want to do that. But I would encourage you right now, to go to God in prayer and say, Lord, I've been a fool in one area or another. Whatever God is revealing to your heart, he knows you better than I know you. He knows you maybe better than you know yourself. He created you. Lord, I've been a fool in my marriage, in my career, in my friendships, in my decisions. You're younger, maybe it's at school, how you're treating other people. Lord, I've been a fool. Help me to be wise. That's our prayer. Father, help us all to do this your way, to live life your way. We put all of this in your hands, I pray. In Jesus' name. Amen. We'll stand and sing.